Good. Kennedy Carter now with 12 points off the bench.
Goes around to Gumake. Drives baseline.
And shot rejected by Izzy McMagor. In pain after she caught that fingertip in the eye or right around it.
And kind of swatted at Caitlin. Do you intend to hit her in the
and don't retaliate? Like, just let them hit you. Be what it is. Don't let it get inside your head, and know it's coming. I think at this point, I know I'm going to take a couple hard shots a game.
Although fans and experts alike eagerly anticipated Caitlin Clark's arrival in the WNBA, as the brightest star in college basketball now shines a new light on the women's professional league, it appears that the league's veterans missed the memo and greeted Clark with a mix of tough defense, dismissive quotes, and outright taunting. While this type of treatment is common for rookies entering the big leagues, with Clark everything has been enacted, leading to an unprecedented level of trash talk. Her rivals are rapidly realizing that poking the bear might not be the best course of action. Every time Clark drains a big three-pointer over a rival, those who have dared to disdain her wind up losing a revenge game. When you consider how quickly Clark has adapted to a new style of basketball and a much tougher level of competition, it's evident that she's a superstar in the making. Although almost everyone agrees that she has the talent to excel at the highest level, her toughness and ability to handle physicality have been questioned by both the media and her opponents. Early in her rookie year, Clark became a prime target for WNBA players seeking attention, and the treatment continued even as her performance noticeably improved and she started to score historic numbers. Clark never appeared fazed and always remained composed when talking about opponents and started to defend herself when larger, more seasoned players attempted to push her around. Caitlin Clark's detractors include athletes of all backgrounds, from seasoned superstars to fellow rookies. It appears that many WNBA players believe they are superior to Clark, but they are unable to support their disrespectful words and actions when it matters most. One recurring theme is trash talking, which is likely to bring out the natural score in a player as skilled and competitive as Caitlin Clark. Let's examine some examples of WNBA players' bad behavior backfiring on them. When the Chicago Sky's Dana Evans team played Clark in the championship game, the aggressive guard made up for her lack of size by playing fiercely and never letting up on the play. The Indiana Fever. As any competitor would attempt to demonstrate, to a rookie in a WNBA regular season game, the diminutive point guard, who is only 5'6", felt compelled to do so. However, Evans went too far in playing tough defense and getting into a street brawl. Just take a look at this. Players from both teams got into a heated argument as Caitlin drove by her and went to the hoop. The rookie was smashed by both opponents in a human sandwich after Dana Evans locked elbows with her and essentially slammed her into a waiting defender, stout Kennedy Carter. Clark was fortunate to escape serious injury, but some choice words were said that the less skilled player's confidence would have been affected by this intense emotional outburst. But for Clark, it only gave her more drive to get revenge on her tormentor by scoring whenever she wanted. This is what happened in the minutes following the foul swish. It is evident from Swish and Swish that Clark is not easily intimidated and is more than willing to put up with some physical discomfort in order to demonstrate her value as a basketball player. Rather than seeking revenge through a physical altercation, She simply took charge of the game and reminded everyone why she is one of the most feared players with the ball in her hands. The Chicago Sky attempted to trick her into losing her composure, but ultimately lost the game, in part because of poor fouls committed by Clark. Despite criticizing Caitlin Clark for being soft and ill-prepared for physical contact, players are regularly protesting her defensive efforts as well, rather than just yelling at her when they are annoyed by her offensive feats. When Clark begins using the same physicality that she frequently encounters, she also receives criticism. One instance where this was evident was when she ran into Kalia Copper, a high-scoring wing for the Phoenix Mercury, after her drive to the basket was stopped by a foul committed by Clark. Copper immediately began to insult Clark and tried to get in his face, but the situation never got to the point where it would have put the players in danger. This is a good illustration of the double standards that Caitlin must deal with every night is evident in the video, but we don't have a transcript of what was said in the heat of the moment. A basketball coach would advise you to make sure the opponent doesn't score when you need to commit a foul, and that's all Caitlin Clark did on that play. However, Kalia Copper didn't think so and thought the contact was excessive to the point of being dirty. Her reaction was quite forceful, and she needed to be separated from Clark, who stayed composed and simply retorted that it was just a foul before leaving to prevent more conflict. Although we can't really know what Copper was thinking when she reacted to the foul, it's reasonable to wonder if the opponent's identity was revealed, played a part in whether she would have started talking so aggressively if someone else had fouled her in her typical way. Despite all the provocations, Caitlin chose to let her game speak for herself. She refused to alter her style and played a steady game that helped the team win another thrilling game in front of the home crowd. The score stayed close well into the last quarter, but Clark and her teammates prevented the Mercury from pulling away when it came time to seal the deal. Instead of trying to be a hero and win by herself, Caitlin skillfully negotiated double teams and selflessly passed the ball to open teammates. Her final assist of the night was truly beautiful. She is literally playing with the defense, and it's a little surprising that some of the most vocal opponents of Caitlin Clark are seasoned athletes who should know better, but are caught in the moment and exhibit poor sportsmanship. She is fully aware of who is on the court and who will become vulnerable if she attacks the basket B. As a three-time WNBA champion, three-time Israeli League champion, and the current 6th Women's Player of the Year in the WNBA, Alicia Clark of the Las Vegas Aces fits this description. At the mature age of 37, she has no business making cheap jabs at rookies, but during the game against the Indiana Fever, she was so worried about Kate and Clark scoring on her that she just slapped her on the head. The video that follows paints her in a very negative light.
First win last night in Los Angeles. That's got to be pretty tough, I would think, on Caitlin to just...
Alicia Clark should be ashamed of her actions on the basketball court. She not only committed a foul that shouldn't have happened, but she also fled in a fit of rage after being called for it, giving the impression that she blocked the shot cleanly. This is complete nonsense, as you can actually see Caitlin's head moving back and forth after the impact, so Alicia had to be aware that she made contact. Acting shocked and upset about the referee's call feels completely unprofessional and, to be honest, more appropriate for a rookie than a seasoned veteran with a ton of hardware. As you can see in the previous clip, Caitlin Clark took responsibility for the situation by making sure her eye was okay before going into a huddle to prepare for the continuation of play without drama or chasing. In her trophy case, it's difficult to believe that she would have acted in such a manner had any other player been the target of her careless foul, but because there is a deep-seated animosity against her throughout the league, she couldn't just raise her hand and apologize after the fact. Alicia Clark does not appear to be street tough on the court. If anything, the foul served to wake her up and help her focus because she wasn't playing her best before she was hit. She then picked up the pace and started shooting the ball into the basket with much improved efficiency. This is how she looked for the rest of the game against the Aces play. If they're going to pull the upset here, watch this screen. She then made a pocket pass, but her repertoire of slick passes and deep shots was on full display, and she finished with a double-double, again with 13 points and 11 assists. We cannot say that Caitlin Clark has fully avenged this foul just yet because her scoring was a little below average, and it wasn't enough to prevent a loss to a dominant Aces team that is currently in second place in the Western Conference and features A.A. Wilson and last year's MVP. Caitlin Clark's teammates tried some roughhouse tactics in a futile attempt to slow down Clark's momentum during a game against Indiana Fever, and one player in particular acted in a way that is unacceptable, even on a neighborhood playground, let alone in a professional game that was televised to a national audience. Last year, guard Victoria Vivians, who had been dressed for the game, took offense at Clark's offensive assault and began yelling as the two were returning to defense after another deep three from Clark. The scene looked rather ugly. We might need to update the graphic. If it hadn't been for Vivian's teammates who quickly intervened to stop an escalation, things could have gotten even worse. The home crowd at Gainbridge Fieldhouse reacted quite loudly to Vivian's attempt to rile up the local hero, but the fervor eventually subsided. One individual who wasn't particularly insensitive was Caitlin herself, who collectedly left the commotion and went directly to her coach. Since the incident occurred in the second quarter, with Seattle leading by 6 points, there was still plenty of time for Clark to rally her team and turn the tide of the game around, which she did admirably. As a result, the game became very one-sided. Moving forward, let's look at some of Caitlin's best moments from the showdown against Victoria Vivians and the Seattle Storm. Despite starting the game much lower in the standings than Seattle, Clark did everything she could to control the game, including drives to the basket, shots from several feet behind the three-point line, and cunning defensive plays that led to steals. In the end, Clark finished with 23 points and 9 assists, while the Vivians scored 0 points in 9 minutes. More significantly, the Fever won by almost 20 points, and even though the first half was fought very closely, the outcome was never in doubt after Clark flipped the switch and lifted the team onto her shoulders. To instruct Storm players not to attempt to influence Caitlin's thoughts, but it's unclear if they took the lesson to heart because the two teams are in different conferences and have no games left in the regular season, so their next meeting is probably not going to happen until the next season. With 3 WNBA titles and an MVP award under her belt, Diana Taurasi is one of the most accomplished players in women's basketball and a legendary playmaker who has set the bar for point guard play in her generation. Despite this, she still seems to have the right to comment on anything in the game that she believes merits her attention. Her response to the arrival of a highly anticipated rookie class led by Caitlin Clark was understandable, but the mojo Taurasi is displaying doesn't really match her actual skills at this point. Here's how she welcomed the young phenom to the league during her media appearances prior to the start of the WNBA season. She must remember that she is nearing the end of her illustrious career and that she can't hold the mantle for very long.
Reality is coming.
Okay.
There's levels to this thing.
It's just life. We all went through it.
Of course.
And you see it on the NBA side, and you're going to see it on this side, where, you look superhuman playing against 18-year-olds, but you're going to...
Diana's remarks don't seem particularly hurtful, but she is certain that she is still far superior to the rookie. This may have been the case 10 years ago, when Taurasi was at her best, but at 42, she isn't exactly in a position to threaten young players with a dose of reality. The difference between perception and reality became clear to everyone when Diana Taurasi had the opportunity to meet Caitlin Clark on the basketball court and play a direct matchup with her a few months later, but things didn't exactly go as planned. In their first official WNBA meeting, which ended in an Indiana Fever squad victory, Caitlin Clark scorched Diana. With 15 points, 12 assists, and 9 rebounds, Caitlin Clark narrowly missed a triple-double, but Taurasi did. Score 19 points for the Phoenix Mercury. She essentially had to retract her statements after failing to guide her squad to victory. Although Mercury has done its share of hating Caitlin Clark, her brilliance was evident, and her assist total shows that she avoided getting sucked into an individual battle and her teammates whenever the defense overreacted to the threat of her shooting. Chelsea Carter, a tough and unyielding player who enjoys being the enforcer for her team and occasionally goes too far in her desire to discourage opponents from going into the paint, is one of the players who voluntarily took on the villain role in this war of nerves. Carter is a talented basketball player, but her antics frequently overshadow her skill and make headlines, for her egregious foul on Caitlin Clark during a dead ball has been widely discussed for all the wrong reasons, and it continues to be one of the most obvious instances of unsportsmanlike behavior against the rookie. Let's take another look at that iconic clip.
The question is, will they call it?
This occurred immediately after Caitlin made a huge three-pointer, so Chennedy Carter was obviously upset and came up with a horrible way to express it. Since isn't even a basketball play, you can't just rationalize it with any rational explanation. It appears to be an obvious attempt at physical intimidation, which isn't something we see very often on basketball courts in men's or women's competition these days. She was whistled for a flagrant foul on the play, which allowed Clark to score more points from the free throw line and ultimately hurt team. The Sky lost that game and were ultimately swept 3-0, and the A. Wiser girl would have tried to remain silent for a while, but clearly Carter isn't at controlling her emotions and handling upsetting outcomes. A few months after her famous shove of Caitlin Clark, Carter did another dubious thing to feed the doubts of those who think she is resentful. Carter was relatively diplomatic and civil in her post-game comments and denied having ill feelings towards Clark, but her violent acts still earned her the title of Caitlin Hater on the internet, in the direction of the youthful sensation. This time, the trigger was an ESPN list of the best WNBA players, with Caitlin Clark ranked 12 spots higher than Carter. Rather than congratulating those who had achieved a higher ranking, Carter posted a bitter social media post saying, "I average fewer minutes, and my stats are top in the league, but I am at the bottom." The hate isn't that obvious. Although Carter didn't specifically reference Caitlin Clark in her post on her official Twitter account, her assertion that she had the league's greatest statistics is incredibly naive compared to Carter's own at the time, averaging 17.9 points, 2.8 assists, and 1.4 steals per game, compared to Clark's 17.9 points. On numbers alone, the league leads with 8.3 assists and 1.4 steals per game. As much as Carter appears to regret Clark, she is not even her. ESPN is entirely justified in placing Caitlin higher than her older rival, and the same could be said for other WNBA players who rank close to the top of this list. The Sky team's worst enemy is Angel Ree, who has a history of making fun of Caitlin since they were in college. The two are vying for the Rookie of the Year honor, which adds another level of intrigue to a long-running soap opera. In addition to being a little more mature when speaking with the media, Angel at least deserves praise for being forthright about her rivalry with Clark and her provocations on the court. This is an intriguing remark from her regarding the boundaries of trash talk.
If they think it's personal, but when I get between the lines, if friends or anything, if my teammate right here went to play for another team, I'm going to be competitive. I'm going to talk off the court. We're going to kick in and have fun. So I think that's a part of the game, and just trying to normalize that has become a thing, and people are just trying to make it seem like I admire everything she's doing.
All right, that makes some sense, or it would have affected the conversation, but she didn't. And during a game against Caitlin Clark, she committed a flagrant foul that caused an epic media firestorm. Although the foul was, admittedly, within the game's flow, it caused Caitlin to take another blow to the head, and we can see how the transgression occurred, so you can decide for yourself if Angel's typical hatred of the Indiana guard was the driving force. We wonder whether Caitlin made a mental note that she had a debt to pay, but she was unfazed and continued as if nothing had occurred, adjusting her headband and giving her coach a high five. The Sky in Chicago. Let's enjoy Clark's highlights from this game, which the Fever ultimately won. As you can see, there is ample proof that trash talking worked. She attacked the next game against Chicago with a little more vigor and nearly achieved a triple-double with 23 points, 9 assists, and 8 rebounds. Simply put, Caitlin Clark doesn't work the girl out, possesses ice in her veins, and doesn't waste time thinking about the taunts and blows she has received from her opponents. She has stood her ground and discredited many of her detractors without ever using history of performing better when challenged. Clark will probably continue to face sporadic incidents like the ones we just talked about. Her strategy for stifling critics is ideal and will eventually win. She simply needs to keep making those absurd shots and winning big games. Eventually, WNBA players will realize they are playing with fire when they do something outrageous to agitate Caitlin Clark.